Alright, so are you a robot or not? And this project is going to determine that. And for that, we're going to create a small application, and we're also only going to use basics. So this is a beginner project. For those who are looking for something more advanced, that will also come later on. But for this project, we're only going to use the basics. So let's just take a quick look at what we're going to learn in this project actually. So we're going to learn about the DOM, how we can get things from the DOM, select elements by getting elements by ID, querySelector, querySelectorAll, adding event listeners to them. Also, we're going to learn about arrays a bit and what we can also do with arrays, selecting for arrays, a array method, which is a forEach loop. We're going to work with a little bit with conditionals, a simple else, if else statement. Then we're going to use also the math project. We're going to use math.floor and random. Then some Booleans with true and false, string and numbers, functions, only a regular function. We're not going to go into arrow functions right now. Of course, variables, and we're also going to take on the class list. And we're going to add and remove from class lists. So, hope you're excited for this project. Let me also show you how this project actually works and what it actually does. So we have this simple, let me regenerate this. Let's hit a refresh. So it's going to ask you, please select the hexadecimal color, and it's going to tell you which color should you select to verify if you are a human. Now, in order to proceed with this, you need to click submit. These two are disabled, the submit button, and also the are you human is disabled, and this checkbox will be checked if you select the right color, the right hexadecimal color. Now let's select the wrong one. So we click this one, and then an alert will appear with please verify that you are human. If you click OK, then this will refresh itself and a new random color will be assigned. And all of these are random. So we're going to click now the correct one, which is this one. And it will tell us you are a human, yay! And then take a look at this part. If we click OK, it's going to be checked and the submit button is now active. And if we click submit, you are not a robot. Okay, so that's basically the project. So let's get into it. Okay guys, so let's get started. I just created an empty folder and I just called it I'm not a robot project. And let's start up by creating our index.html. Let's create a boilerplate. Let's include our style sheet. So link up. A style sheet that does not exist yet. Style.scss. CSS. Whoa, too much sass for me. Okay, if you want to give it a name, I am not. Let's capitalize this. Not a robot. Okay. And now within here, I'm just going to create two different containers. One is going to be a form, which we will also submit. And one will be for the elements. So for the element, just refresh this part. I need to go back. So one container will be the form. This is actually a form. And one container will be for this element. This right here, these 9 elements, will be also in an empty container. So let's start up with the form. So right within my body. Oh, very important. Let's not forget to include our script tag. Constantly forget to do this. Let's call this main.js, and let's also create our two files here, style.css and our main.js. Hey, go back. Main.js. Okay, so in this video we're only going to do our UI, our style, basic styling, and our skeleton or HTML. So let's create a div with a form underscore container class. Now within this container, we're going to actually create a form. This form will then submit to another page, which we'll call success.html. There's an S there. .html, and let's also create this success.html. Success.html. Okay, this also populated. This is actually a short thing. Let's just create a boilerplate, include our style tag, So link up our style file, style.css, and also this is just this was just a h1 with "you are not a robot." Not a robot. Actually, I'm also going to style this within our body, above our body tag. So I'm going to create here a style tag, and I'm going to take our body, and let's give this text align to the center, a font size of 5 rem, and a text decoration. Actually, text transform to uppercase. I want to have this in uppercase. Also open this one up. Open it up with live server. And hey, where are you? There you are. All right. So that's it for this part. Now let's populate our other index.html. So when we are going to succeed with this submit, as you can see here, it's going to take us to another page, which is the success.html. Okay, let's also open up our project. It's empty for now. Now let's go back to our form, and within our form we're going to start and create a h1 first of all. h1, and we just type in the text of select the hexadecimal color, and we're going to include within the span, which will also have an ID, the color that we're going to dispose. Now this color will be exactly the same color that the JavaScript will generate. So we're going to take care of this in JavaScript. So we're just going to give it an ID of selector or select color. Okay, and within this ID will the correct color will be displayed, or not the correct color, but the color that you need to select. Okay, and after that we're just going to type in still remaining after span. So select the color for verification and exclamation mark. Okay, now still remaining within our form, we need to create two more things: a input tag, and this will have the type of checkbox. We don't need a name for it, we just need also ID, because I want to take to grab onto this in JavaScript. So checkbox, let's give it the same ID, checkbox, and underneath our input we're going to create a label tag, which will be for the checkbox, and we'll only say for "are you human?" Why am I typing the wrong thing? Oh man. So "are you human?" Okay, that's basically it for this part. Now I'm also going to include a button down here. So button, and this will have a class of btn and a btn light. Okay, this will also have the type of submit. This is very important because this is going to submit our form. Now we could have also used a input type of submit down here and give it the value of submit, and this will done the same thing, but I want to actually want to be able to really quickly style this button. And for this I'm going to include Bootstrap. So I'm just going to copy the link from Bootstrap. You can obviously go to bootstrap.com, and let me actually show you this. Okay, so there would be Bootstrap. If you go to Bootstrap, click on Get Started, and you need to copy this link right here for CSS. Okay, copy this, insert it above your style link. Whoa, that's a bit too much. Woo, I just copied the wrong thing. So let's make this larger. Copy to clipboard. Okay, let's go up here and include our styling. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there's a button. I just copied in the wrong thing. So let's go back to our HTML, and after our div, with the form container div, okay, so after this one, we're going to create another container. Let's create now a main tag, and let's give this a class of container just. Okay, within this, I'm going to create 9 elements. So I'm going to create 9 divs with the class of element, and I'm going to multiply this by 9. This is going to create me 9 elements. Okay, so these are just 9 empty elements, and within each of this element, using a for each loop, we're going to generate a different hexadecimal color. Now let's also go ahead and do our styling, and then we're done with this video. Okay, now let's grab onto the body first of all, and let's set it to a max width of 700 pixels. I don't want to be that large. Okay, let's take out the margins, top and bottom 0, and left and right auto. This can be centered. Now I'm going to display everything as flex. As I said, I'm not going to explain each and everything that I'm going to do in HTML and CSS. I have a couple of Udemy courses for that, and also many videos on YouTube. So let's also change the flex direction to a column. Don't have everything in a column, because flexes in a row actually. Okay, let's justify the content to center, align the items to the center, and text align to the center. Okay, I'm also going to change the background color to a hexadecimal of 333, and we'll do this right now. Now I'm going to do this afterwards. So font family, let's go with, say, Joe. Okay, now next up I'm going to create a few variables. So I'm going to target the root, few CSS variables. Okay, let's create the first one with light color. Hash DDD and DD. And the next one will be dark color. Okay, and this would be a hash 111. Yeah, I'm also going to create a variable for a texture. I'm going to use this actually often in our code here. So text shadow of 5 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, and a RGBA color of 0, not dot, 0, and 0, and a opacity of 0.8, alpha. Okay, so that's basically it for our variables. Now let's also go ahead and use them, but first I'm going to style our h1, which is going to have a color of orange, so nothing special there, and a margin. Now for the margin, I'm going to push this down, top and bottom. Let's go with 3 rem. Actually, let's go with 4 rem, and left and right 0. And now I'm going to apply to this a text shadow of the variable text shadow. Okay. I could increase the font size, but let me actually zoom in a bit, because I do have a much larger resolution. Now I'm going to take the span tag within it. So somewhere here is the span tag. So from our h1, let's take the span tag, and let's change its background color to the variable color of dark color. I'm going to give it a color for the text of light color. I'm going to give it a padding from top and bottom 0.2 rem, and left and right 1 rem. Okay, we can't see anything because we don't have a hexadecimal number generated right now. Okay, next up, let's take care of our label within here. Let's take the label tag, and I'm just going to give it a color of light color. L light. Okay, that's it for the label. Now let's take our container. So we're going to take the class of container. And we're going to limit it by telling it that its width should be 350 pixels and its height should be also 350 pixels. So we're trying to achieve a box here. Now let's display within it. I'm going to display everything as grid. So we can achieve this. Let's go back. We're going to achieve this grid system. And now we can give it a few grid template columns by typing in repeat, and we're going to repeat 3 times 1 fraction. Okay, and let's also give it a gap of 10 pixels. So this will be the gap between those templates, those columns and rows. If I would type in here 20, then this would be for the rows. Okay, so this is actually for both of them. Now let's also give it a box shadow. I'm going to do something different here. So 0, 0, 10 pixels and 2 pixels, and an RGBA of 0.8. Okay, so there's our box right there. Now let's start with the elements. Let's grab onto them. So let's take the class of element and let's limit them with width 100 pixels and height 100 pixels. So once again, square. Now also going to give them borders so they can be a bit visible for now. 1 pixel solid and a variable color of dark color. Okay, so there are the little elements right in there. Let's also give them a box shadow. I'm going to actually copy exactly the same box shadow that I have up here down here. Okay, so this is starting to look like something as a grid system. So let's continue on by displaying the elements themselves as flex. I'm going to justify the content, the center, and align the items to the center. Okay, and for the color, for the display color within these elements, we're going to choose our light color. I also want to give them a text shadow. So text shadow of the variable of shadow, text shadow, and a border radius. Where are you? Not background, border. There we go, of 5 pixels. Okay, so that's it for the element styling. Now all we need to do is to have a hover effect when we go over them. So let's take the class of element, and let's say that when we hover over them, then the cursor should be pointer. Our box shadow will now go inwards, so inset, and we're going to use 0, 0, 150. Let me use 100 pixels, so it's going to take up the entire thing, and also 5 pixels and the color of dark color. Okay, so if I hover over them, it's going to turn dark. Okay, so next up we're going to take care of the functionality. But I seem to have here a problem. Let me just quickly fix this by giving the container a margin to the top of also free RAM. It's going to push everything down a bit. Okay, so let's now take care of our JavaScript. So now that we're done with our styling, let's continue on and create our JavaScript. So first things first, you're going to create a few variables. Now, we're not going to use var, we're going to use const and let. Now, I'm using const when I'm assigning something that will not change, and I'm using let when I'm assigning something that will change or more certainty will change. And this is also really helpful for other developers when they're reading your code. They can determine, okay, so this will change later on. So let's create first of all a const, and we want to grab on from something from the DOM. Now, first thing I'm going to grab on is this button with the type of submit. Now let's take a look first of all at our button. So here's our button. It has a tag of button and a type of submit. Now actually, let me show you first of all something much easier. Let's grab onto this checkbox. If you want to grab onto the checkbox, then first of all we need to give this variable a name. So let's say checkbox. And we're going to go into our document, and from our document we will use getElementById. Okay, and within here, within quotations, usually there's double quotes, but my JavaScript is set up that is going to transform single quotes to double quotes. So don't have to use shift and quotes. So from here, we're going to grab on to this ID of checkbox. Okay, so let's copy this, go into our JavaScript, paste it in, and close it up with camera case, and there we go. We grabbed onto it. Now, if we want to verify that we really grabbed onto it, let's right click on our web page and click on inspect, or you could hit F12 on your keyboard, and this will also open up your console. Actually, you will most probably land with F12. You're opening up your console, because with inspect you're actually opening up the element inspector. You need to go to the console. Now let me just zoom in here just a tinge. Okay, and within our console I'm going to check if I grabbed onto this checkbox. So let's do a console log of this variable. Okay, and as soon as I hit save, I've grabbed onto this element. Okay, so I can take this out. Now I'm also going to, now that I grabbed onto this element, I can do something. For example, I could disable it. Now if I would go back into our HTML and type in here, there's our checkbox, disabled, and hit save, you can see I can no longer click it. If I take this out, I can check it and uncheck it. I'm going to do this with JavaScript. So let's take the variable checkbox, and we're going to now take care of a property of it. So we're going to hit disabled, and we're going to set it as true. There we go. And it has exactly the same effect as we have done it in our HTML. Okay, so it's no longer clickable. And I'm doing this because I'm going to enable it later on using a condition. And the condition will be, this will only be enabled when the user selects the correct hexadecimal number or color. Number, which results in a color. Okay, now let's do the same thing for our button here, because our button submits. We don't want this. We want our button to not be able to submit unless this checkbox is checked. So first of all, create another const. Actually, I should create it up here, and down here, we're going to type in a comment of disable checkbox. I can't type today. Checkbox. You know what? I'm going to copy this. Ooh, not a good day today. So disable checkbox, and we disabled our checkbox. Now let's create another variable. Let's call this submit button. Submit, and I'm just going to type in here now btn. So let's go to our document again, but this time I'm going to use querySelector. Now within here, within querySelector, it's very important that you select the elements exactly as you have select them in a CSS file. So if I would select a checkbox, a ID of checkbox, then I would need to type in hash and checkbox. Okay, so if I do this and let's create our console log again, and console log now our submit button, you can see I have exactly the same thing selected again. And also telling me now that it's disabled, okay? Although if I take a look in our HTML, I don't have within here typed in disabled. But because we disabled it using JavaScript, so the script loaded and it checked, okay, I'm going to select this and I'm going to go down here and disable it. Okay, so let's go back to our button because this is not what we want to select. We want to select the type, this button right here. I'm going to tell it that we're going to select a button which has the type of submit. So I'm going to use square brackets and type in here type equals submit. Okay, so if I hit save and I have it console log down here, you see I selected now that button. And we're going to do the same thing to the button as we did to the checkbox. I'm going to copy this down and replace the checkbox with the submit button. So also the button is now, because I console logged it down here, you can see it is disabled. So both of them are disabled now. Next up, we're going to grab onto our elements. So the elements down here. So let's create another variable, const. Let's call them elements. We're going to go to our document. And this time I'm going to use querySelectorAll, because getElementById and querySelector is specific for selecting only one element. Now if I'm using querySelectorAll, it's going to select all of the elements which have, within quotations, the class, so dot element. Okay, so if I would console log now, I'm going to cut out and paste down here our console log and replace it here. You can see I'm going to get this node list, and this node list is going to tell me we have 9 elements selected, or 9 nodes. Okay, so we have our elements selected, and let's also select this output right here. So I'm going to go underneath our elements and let's create another variable, another const of select color. Okay, now document again. We're going to use, let's use getElementById. getElementById, and we're going to select our ID of, let's go into our HTML. I'm going to show you which one exactly. I'm going to select this span, this ID from our span from our H1, so this one right here. So let's go back into our JavaScript, select our ID, and I'm also going to show you if I would do, let's comment this one out to query, let's console log this. You can see we have our selector selected, select color. Now I'm going to comment this back in, and I'm going to show you something. I'm getting a syntax error, and this is because you cannot redefine a const. What you can do is redefine a let, for example. Now if I would use let and do this and do querySelector here, I'm showing you this because of two things. So first of all, showing you that const and let, the difference between const and let, I can reassign the value of the let variable. So I'm reassigning it here. And the second thing is showing you querySelector with an ID. So hash, hit save, and you can see I have the same thing selected here. Even if I would do this, then it is selected. Okay, so let me comment this one out, comment this back in, and because it's not going to change, I'm going to change it back to a const. Next up, let's take our elements. I'm going to go down here and assign each of them a color. Now for this, you need to use a forEach loop. And a forEach loop always takes in a callback function. So the forEach method executes a provided function once for each element of the array. So let's create a function within here. And from our function, we're going to select each element within our function. Now, as I said, we want to assign each element within here a random color. Now, if I would now create a const, which I would assign to a color, a const with the name of color, and I will assign this to a function. And this function will be getRandomColor. Now we need to create this function. So each time I'm going to use this variable is going to call upon this function and create for me a random color. So let's actually go down here and let's create this getRandomColor function. So I need to use the keyword function, then the name getRandomColor, and open and close parentheses and open and close camel case. Now let's first of all create a const which we'll call letters. And within this letters, we're going to create a string. Now strings can hold everything from numbers to letters. Now in order to get a hexadecimal number, we need to go over a string which has the specific numbers and letters that are specific to hexadecimal numbers. So we know that hexadecimal numbers go from 0 to 9. So let's do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they also go from A to F. So let's do a capital A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay? And we also know that a hexadecimal number starts with a hash. So I'm just going to create a variable let with the name of color. And I'm going to assign it to a string of hash. Now next up, we're going to create a for loop. And a for loop repeats until a specific condition evaluates to false. So let's create a for loop by typing the keyword for. Then within parentheses, we're going to create a variable called I. We're going to assign it to 0. Then we'll tell that we're going to tell that a loop will iterate until I is less than 6. And we're also going to iterate I plus plus. So plus 1 time. We're going to add on to I each time. Now next up, we're going to use an additional assignment operator, which is color. And we're going to assign plus equal. So this is an additional assignment operator. And this adds the value of the right, so of this operand, which we'll create, to a variable and assigns the result of the variable. So now we're going to use our letters variable that we created up there. And we're going to go through these letters by using a math.floor. And what this will do is it will return the largest integer less than or equal to the given number. And within this, we're also going to use another operator, another mathematical operator. So math.random, because I want to select a random number from our string right here. Okay, and this should go 16 times. So let's multiply it by 16, because 16 is also the number that is in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0 to 9 is 10, and this last one are 6. Okay, and now a function needs to return something, because until now we have a loop, where we start with a variable, a const, then in our variable for the hash, and then we created a loop. But what we want as an end result is we want that this function to return the color. And let's close it up. So if I would now console log, let's take our console log from up here, cut it out, paste it in, and let's console log our function getRandomColor in order to initiate it. And if I do this, I'm going to get a hash of 0 blah 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 blah, 60d, so far and so on. If I hit save again, I would get a different color, and again a different color, and so far and so on. So each time this function is initiated, I will get a different color. Now this is why I assigned this right here, this const, to this random function. Now although you can see we're getting this color, it is not the same color as it is here because of its scope. This const of color and this color right here, this let of color, have different scope. Their scope or their functionality ends within this function, and this one ends within this function. So it's not the same thing. Please do not confuse them. Now that, let me show you something. Now that we have this done, we know that the function will be now pushed within here, and each time the function is called, a color will be assigned. So let's assign a color to each element, and we can do this by selecting each element. So element, and we'll do for each element, we're going to change their style, and from the style we're going to change their background color, and we're going to assign for each of them the variable color. Okay, so each element within this is going to get, oh, what the hell just happened? This should be style dot background color, and hey, as soon as I hit save, each of them has now a different color, and each time we refresh this page, it's going to get a different color. Okay, so we have our functionality done for our colors. Now I also want to display here the color as a numeric indicator. So I'm going to go down here and say that each element dot inner HTML and the element property inner HTML gets or sets the HTML markup contained within the element. So inner HTML, and now we can assign it the variable color. So each of them will have the correct color displayed, or the assigned color displayed right here. Now I also want that the first generated color should be also displayed up here. Now we can do this by getting our select color variable that we created up here, which selects the ID of this one, putting it into our functionality or in our for each loop, and again dot inner HTML, and we're going to set it to the color variable. Okay, so there we go. Now next up, we're going to create our functionality which will determine if we selected the right color. So let's type in here, up here, comment assign color to elements. This will be generate random color, func, and down here we're going to have check if right color. Okay, now for this we're going to take our elements again. So elements dot for each, we create a loop again, which will have a callback function. We're going to grab onto the elements again. So for each element, and now we're going to assign each element a event listener. So element, we're going to add event listener. We're going to listen for a click event. Now when this click happens, another function will be launched, which will have actually a condition. Now we want to check if we have the right color. So for this we're going to create an if statement, if else statement. Okay, so if something is true or not true, something should happen, and if it's not true or true, something else should happen. Now let's say that we want to check if the element dot inner HTML So it's going to go over each element and it's going to check if it's in HTML. So this one right here is equal. So not only its type, but also its value is equal to the selected, so selector dot inner HTML. Selector color dot inner HTML. So we're going to check if on what we're clicking here is the same thing that is displayed up here. So if it is true, then we will first of all use a alert function. This is a built-in function for JavaScript for the browser, and it's going to tell us you are human. So we can already try this out. So if I click on this, nothing happens. If I click on this one, which is the right color, it's going to tell us that you are human. Now also, when we do this, we want our checkbox to be checked and our button, well, to be active again. Now for this, we're going to do something to the checkbox. First of all, we're going to select our checkbox variable up here, which selects our checkbox. And then we're going to tell it to be checked. It has a property checked. And we're going to set this to true. Okay, so let's check this out. If I click on this one, nothing happens. If I click on the last one, then my checkbox.checkbox, but checked. Okay, there we go. So if I click on this one, then the alert appears and this one is checked. Also, if you change the orders, if I would put the alert down here, then first the check will happen. And no, actually this is a conditional function, so this needs to be true. You need to click on OK in order for this to be executed. This kind of stops your execution. Now we also want our button to be enabled again. So for this, we're going to take the submit button that we created, dot disable, and we're going to set this one now to false. Okay, so our button will be active again. You're human, and we can click our button again. Okay. Oh, this is the wrong one. Actually, this was the first one. I'm going to deselect this and going to go and leave only this one open. Now, if this isn't true, so if we don't select the right button, then we're going to alert another string of please verify. So please that you are human. Also, we will leave then the checkbox as false. But first of all, let's do something else. So not only that it's false, because we can then still click for it until it's right, until it's true. That's not only so that's not the only thing that we want to do. We also want, if we click on something and it's false, then everything should refresh and we should start from the start again. And for this, we're going to use a function. So let's create here a function which we'll call page refresh. Actually, I don't have to do this here. We're going to do it within here. So there's something called location, and we can add to this a reload. We're going to set this to true. Okay, so if I click on the wrong one, then the page will refresh, the page will reload, and each time the page reloads, as you know, the functionality starts from start. So you're going to get new numbers and also new colors until we hit the right one, and now we can submit. Okay, but there's another thing that I want to do is also change this button right here. Now we know that this button has a class, there we go, btn light. Okay, and this is a Bootstrap class. Now there's also success. Okay, btn success. If I hit save, the button is now green. Well, it's disabled, but if I click on this one, it's correct. Now it's a lighter green. So I want when we click on the right color, this button to also change its class. And we can do this with something called classList. So let's change this back to light. Now let's go into our JavaScript, and we will remain within our if statement. And when the if statement is true, then we'll take our submit button. We will remove, so we'll use the classList, and we will first of all remove the class of btn light. Okay, so let's check this. Let me console log this also. So console log, I'm going to console log a submit button, so we can see it down here when this happens. So click, this is the right one, hit OK, and now you can see the submit button has only the btn class. You can see all of the styling just disappeared. Now we don't want this. We want to take our submit button dot classList dot add now another class, and this class will be btn dash success. Okay, now let's check this out. Click on the right one, hit OK. The submit button changes its class, and also down here you can see it just has now the class of submit btn success. Okay, and the button is green. So very quickly, let's recap. You used here an if statement, and the if statement executes the statement if a specific condition is truly. If the condition is falsely, so down here, another statement will be executed, and we can then use the else statement. So we grabbed onto our checkbox. We told that this property of checked should be now true, and the submit button should be no longer disabled. So the disabled property, we changed it to false, and we took our class list and we took then again our button, and we told it that the class list and the element class list is a read-only property. Okay, that will return a live document token collection of the class attributes of the elements. And this can then be used to manipulate the class by using the add or the remove method. So we remove then its initial class of button light, and we added another class of button success. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this project. Hope you enjoyed it. You are not a robot, it seems. And yay, catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.